of people that we hadn't heard before, and in the last month they declined for each for their own various reason. So I really appreciate you regulars being ready to step up and give us. I think we've got a great lineup today. And my favorite topic is your favorite story. I want to hear the one you like the best. I think we might enjoy that the best. So welcome, everyone. I'll go ahead and start by introducing our first speaker. Ed Lewis is a storytelling groupie. He goes where he can go and tells where he can tell. And he's a board member of this organization, as well as Pacific Liaison to the National Storytelling Network. And he has told stories lots of places, including Amsterdam, Sweden, Ireland, and others. And October 5th, coming up, he is going to be telling at a Zoom story swap gathering in India. And it says here, contact Ed to have the logon information sent to you for his October 5 India. His email is in the chat room. And Ed Lewis is a wonderful storyteller, and he puts together celebrations, and he's been a hard-working supporter of our Auburn Winter Storytelling Fest all along. And Ed, I really appreciate you, and anytime you're ready.
All right.
Ed's story is the world's greatest, question mark?
All right. Well, it was a typical day in the ancient city of Fez, Morocco in 1643. Bedouin camel herders came down from the Atlas Mountains with their camel products, meat, milk, kaftan coverings, blankets, hides, all kinds of things. From Asia, across the Silk Road, silk traders came and brought their beautiful silk products. From Egypt, traders came with gold and gem-studded jewelry. And from Venice, the glassblowers came with their amazing products. And it was a grand marketplace. It was the world's most famous marketplace. At precisely 5:30 a.m., Nazra woke up, donned his kaftan, as he usually did, slid down the banister from the second floor to the first floor of his mansion, went into the grand kitchen where he had his typical breakfast of sweet honey cakes and spicy mint tea that he poured from high up. After he was done with breakfast, he went down into the basement of this mansion, and he went through a secret passageway out into the alley, an alley that led to the market. He went down the alley and he came to the opening of the huge marketplace. And there were lots of side roads in this market, but there was one huge open air portion of the market. He looked around that market and he found his first client. He walked over to the silk vendors where it was most crowded. And accidentally, he bumped into one of the rich buyers that was there and knocked him to the ground, and he picked him up and apologized and then went on as quickly as he could. And he went on a little richer because he had three pockets full of gold, pouches full of gold. You see, Nazra was the world's greatest pickpocket. He went into the alleyway, checked it out. He had his three pockets, but he had about an hour left. So he went through the markets and accidentally bumped into people. And within that hour, he had 9 pouches of gold. So he went back through the market and got into the alleyway that led to his mansion. When all of a sudden, this young kid ran past him and knocked him right to the ground. Well, he got up and they didn't even apologize. He got up and he felt a little bit lighter. And he felt lighter because he had 3 less pouches of gold. The world's greatest pickpocket had been pickpocketed. But he wasn't about to let that happen. He ran down the alleyway. He saw that young boy up ahead of him, and he was bent over and he was counting out his reward, all the pouches of gold that he had gotten. Nasra snuck up behind this boy, grabbed his chair, pulled his neck back, and put a curved dagger right at his throat. But he soon realized that this wasn't a boy. This was a woman close to his age. And she looked up at him and she said, Nasra, I guess maybe you're not the world's greatest pickpocket, are you? And he kind of liked what he saw. And they got to talking, and they decided to form a partnership. So together, for the next year, they pickpocketed all over the world. Now, they didn't really need to do that because they had riches beyond imagining. But they liked the danger and the excitement. So after that first year, they got married. It was true love. And 9 months later, they were ready to birth their first child. And they had determined that that child would become even more famous than them as the real world's greatest pickpocket. The midwife, when the baby was born, took the baby and handed the boy to Nasra. And Nasra just looked with loving eyes and was so excited about this. But he noticed something was wrong with the baby. I mean, there was just, the baby's arm was up like this on its chest. And they tried to move it, and it was like it was frozen, like the bones were just grafted in place. They went to the doctor. The doctor said, I don't know, I've never seen anything like this. I have no idea what's going on. They had lots of money, so they went to doctors all over the world, and for the next 6 months, they tried everything they could, and the doctor said, we've never seen anything like this. We have no idea what is going on. So, well, there went their hopes of getting the world's greatest pickpocket, but of course they loved their child. They were going to raise that child to be whatever the child wanted to be. But they heard of this witch doctor down in southern India that had all these miracle cures. And so they thought, well, we'll try one more time. So they caught a boat and went up the Mediterranean to the small island south in southern India. And they went into the witch doctor and said, can you help us? Have you ever seen anything like this? And she said, oh, of course. I know exactly what's wrong with your baby. Well, we'll pay you anything, please. What do you want? Said, all I want is the satisfaction that I see on your faces when I solve the problem for you. Thank you so much. So she took out of her pocket a long golden chain, and on the end of it was a round watch piece. She took that watch piece and she put it right up to the baby's eyes, and the baby looked right at it. And then she took that watch piece and moved it. And the baby's eyes and head tracked that movement. She did this for at least a couple minutes. And then the baby's hand started reaching out towards the watch. And when he got right next to the watch to grab it, out of the baby's hand came the midwife's wedding ring. Thank you.
So indeed, he was the world's greatest pickpocket. He started young.
All right.
Good job. Good story.
And thank you, Ed. I hadn't heard that story before, and it was a wonderful telling, a wonderful rendition, and good job to even have the ring ready there as your prop. Well done. It made it it brought it home visually.
Excuse me, and that was an old folk tale that I heard in a storytelling class I took in the 90s. I don't know where it's from, but I was in the class, but it's some kind of an old folk tale.
Yeah. Well, I think it's wonderful. And what a great way to start off today. A day of great tellers and great stories. And next we have Joyce Orman. Joyce, are you with us? Let's see. We go to gallery view.
You have to unmute yourself, Joyce.
Joyce. I don't see Joyce. Okay, Joyce isn't with us. Technical difficulties.
No, I can see her.
There.
Joyce is here. She's just not.
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, hi. There you are. Hi, Joyce. Welcome.
Okay. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. You look great.
Oh, good.
I
Okay.
hear you great. Were you able to hear Ed's story?
This is not really a myth, but it's formed to be a myth. Years ago, about 30 years ago or so, my daughter was teaching at Nanyang University in Singapore, and all of her spare time, she was skin diving and scuba diving all over the Micronesian islands in the South Pacific. And she made a film called Travelogue. Well, in one of her underwater scenes, she was swimming among the giant turtles. And she gave just a brief sentences or two about the myths of the turtle. And that was all. And so when I got a chance to really sit down and talk with her, I asked her about it. And she said, yes, the people of the small islands that they visited really regarded the sea turtle with great honor. And so I went to research, and I researched, and I could not find anything. Most of the stories came from the bigger islands, not from the little small islands that Becky was talking about. So but there was one running factor through all. Storytellers were the carriers of the culture of each of the islands. So I put together the bits and pieces, and this is my myth from the South Islands. Many years ago, when the world was all water, there lived an ancient old mother sea turtle, and she swam about the ocean, and she saw beautiful things. All the life was underwater. She thought to herself, some of these animals and plants should have somewhere else to go. They should go above the water. So she took her paws, calloused paws, and she started gathering up the seaweed and the mud and the sand and formed islands. And she pushed those islands together to form continents until she had 7 continents and thousands of islands, both big and small. And she was satisfied. Eons went by, I don't know how long. And she was satisfied. But then she looked and she said, something's missing. I need someone to organize and take care of these plants and animals that are now on land. So she went down and she formed clay and sand and a little seaweed. And she brought it up to this, close to the island, and she had formed a human. Then she took some red coral and she crushed it in her mighty flippers. And she slipped it in to the human being for a heart and a circular system. a blood source, and she pushed them up, several of them up on an island, said, go forth and multiply. And they did. And she swam around the earth as they moved around the earth. Now, this took many, many years. But old Mother Sea Turtle was not worried. She was ancient, and she was going to go on for eons and eons, and she knew that. Oh, one day she was sunning herself on a sandy beach and listening to the chatter of the island people that were there. And she laughed and she listened, and then something was wrong. These people were only talking about now. They weren't telling any stories at all. They didn't have any past to build on because they didn't know about it. All they knew about was the now. That was not good. How were the people of the world going to form their culture if they didn't have stories? So she started swimming slowly. And with a sigh, she said, I have to go on land. So she swam to the nearest island, one of the Micronesian islands. She swam towards the edge. As she got to the edge, she rolled once. She rolled twice. She rolled a third time, and the ocean carried her up and landed her on the beach. And as she lay there, she got up. She was covered in a flowing green of all shades, flowing gown. So barefoot and with a flowing gown, she walked toward the village, where she was greeted with kindness and welcomed and moved right into the village. In a few years, she picked out a strong, honorable fisherman, and they married. Time passed. They had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 daughters, all of good nature, good memories. And she raised those daughters, and she raised the village. Every night she told stories around the center of the village. Now, as the oldest daughter became ready, she took the daughter aside and said, I've taught you all the stories of the world, and now it's your duty to go and spread these stories and build on these stories where I will take you. She took her down to the edge of the sea, walked her in. Old Mother Sea Turtle rolled once, twice, 3 times, and had her broad back and big flippers. She took her first and eldest daughter onto her back, and across the seas they went. And she took her first daughter to Africa. She came back, went back to the village. When the second daughter she told her the same story, took her down to the edge, rolled, put her on her back, took her to the second continent, Asia. She went back, and so forth. The third daughter went to Europe. The fourth daughter went to, got mixed up. The fourth daughter went to Europe. The fifth daughter went to North America. The sixth daughter went to Australia. Oh, I missed one daughter. She went to South America. And then the seventh daughter, she talked to her. She said, you won't go, but your responsibility is to spend and send stories throughout all the islands all around the world. And so they all went, they all told stories. They all started cultures around the world. And when Sea Turtle's time on Earth was about to be finished, she sighed and she turned and she walked down the sand on feeble limbs and hunched because her time on the land was to be done. She walked down to the edge of the sea. She looked back at the village and she smiled. She spent many years amongst the people. She went down and she rolled once, twice, 3 times, and again had her large flippers and her giant shell, and she swam off, satisfied that no matter how much longer she would swim through the oceans, her job to the world was done. And that's my story. And thank you for listening. And will you please pass it on? Thank you.
Thank you, Joyce. Thank you. Beautiful story. Are you the author of that story?
Yes.
Wow.
I didn't want to be, but I could not find a story that matched anything that Becky told me that the people on the small islands were telling her. And so I just took all the various pieces I could find and tried to put it into one story that sort of matched what she said the various people told her. So that's how it became a story. But I had to make sure that everybody knew that it wasn't a true myth from the South Sea Islands, that it was a collaboration.
Well, thank you, Joyce. That was not only well told, but well authored. Thank you. Coming up next is a fellow who, if you call him on the phone, he might say his name is Larry, but he's been the president of this group for 7 years, and we love him so much and respect him so much that we call him Sir Lawrence Grayson. And he's been telling since he was, believe it or not, 9 years old. He has told in many locations, as far flung as Canada and Laos, believe it or not. He loves stories with a moral, and he is visually impaired, which is the reason we don't see his face. If you want to put a face to his voice, he has long flowing hair, he's ruggedly good looking, and kind of body kind of built like a Chippendale. So if you want that visual, that's Sir Lawrence. And one of the hosts, where he was telling one time, didn't actually understand that he was actually blind. And so when Sir Lawrence stood up to tell his story, he started off with his back to the audience. And and the host said, "Oh, I guess you really are blind, aren't you?" So here he is. And if he was on video, he'd hold up his white cane and he'd say, "This is a stick up," like he likes to do in the bank. And without any further ado, he's telling one of my favorite stories that always gets me. Here is Sir Lawrence Grayson.
Thank you very much. This story is very close to my heart because many people think that men can't cry or should not cry. So this is a story that allows me to cry or to laugh or to cheer for joy, and it has all kinds of emotions in it. I got it off the internet in 1998, and I've been telling it ever since. Information, please. I was born in a small town near Tacoma, Washington. My parents had the very first telephone in the neighborhood. It was high up on the wall in a wooden box with a silver receiver hanging on the side. It was so high I could not reach it. But I listened to my mom when she used the phone and talked to a person inside the phone named Information Please. This lady was so wonderful. She knew every information, everybody's phone number, the weather, anything you wanted. But one day I was home alone. My dad was at work and my mom was visiting a neighbor. And I was down in the basement working in the wood shop. And I smashed my thumb with a hammer. Ouch! It hurt! But there was no one there to give me sympathy. So I went around the house with my thumb in my mouth. And then I saw it. The telephone. I ran into the library and I pulled out a stool and I pulled it over in front of the wall and I hopped up on the stool and I reached high up on the wall to the receiver, put it to my ear, and with a trembling voice, I asked, "Information, please." A sweet voice came into my ear. "Information, may I help you?" Now I had an audience. "My finger hurts." "Is it bleeding?" "No." "Do you have an eye spots?" "Yes." "Well, chip a piece of ice off and hold it to your finger. That will make it feel better. After that, I went for information with her all times. I had helped her with, she helped me with my math. She helped me with my geography. She even told me where Philadelphia was. She helped me with all kinds of information I needed at school. Then one day of horrors, my pet canary died, and I was inconsolable. I went to the phone and I cried, Why does a beautiful bird have to end up as a dust heap on the bottom of the cage? Why?" She said softly, "Paul, remember there are many worlds to sing in." That made me feel better. Then I asked her, "Do you know how to spell the word fits?" She was very good about giving me answers. Then one day, my parents decided, they didn't consult me, that they would move all the way across country to Boston. And when I discovered that there was a silver, small little phone on a table in a hallway, I knew information please did not live in that phone. So I didn't bother to call her. Then when I grew up, my sister had flown back to Washington and went to college, and I decided to go back to college there. I missed my hometown. And I flew into Seattle, and without thinking, I called my sister, talked to her for a little bit, and then I called my hometown operator. And I heard a sweet voice come on the phone. "Information, may I help you?" I hadn't planned this, but I asked her, "Can you spell the word fits?" There was a long pause. Then she said, "I suppose your finger's well by now." "It is you! I've missed you all these years. Can I call you again when I'm back in town?" "Oh, please do. And ask for Sally when you call." Well, it took me a while to get settled in my dorm. I was going to college, and it took me a while. But then I called and asked for information, please. Another sweet voice came on the phone. "May I help you?" "Can I speak to Sally, please?" "Are you a good friend of hers?" "Oh, yes, a longtime friend." "Well, I'm sorry to tell you that Sally was working part-time and she passed away last week." My heart sunk. "Wait a minute. Is your name Paul?" "Yes," I said. "Well, she left you a note in case you called. This is what it said. Remember, Paul, there are many worlds to sing in. I knew what she meant. Thank you so much for listening.
That was wonderful.
Yes.
Great.
Thank
Fantastic.
you.
Nice job, Sir Lawrence.
Thank you.
Unmute ourselves and say thank you.
I'm glad I was able to tell
Thank
it.
you.
Way to go, Larry.
Thank you. Way to go.
Thank you, Sir Lawrence.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
Well done, Sir Lawrence.
I remember
Never
when I
tire
was
of hearing
first,
that story. I really enjoyed hearing it again. And you tell it so well, just like you were there.
Thank you.
Well done. Thanks for joining us. Any other, since you can't see visuals, any other comments for Sir Lawrence?
Hey, Larry.
Yes. Did everybody cry?
You know I don't cry.
I did.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you, Larry.
You're welcome.
It's better
Thank
every
you.
time you tell it. Great story, Larry.
Yeah. Thank you.
Wonderful story.
I
And I was
remember
born
when
in-
the best place to get gossip was from the party line.
Party line.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I was born in Sacramento, not near Seattle.
Larry, this is Linda Kennedy.
Hello,
First time I
Linda.
heard you tell that was long time ago. And for years I thought it was true. I'm going to still believe it's true.
Me too.
Well, on the internet it said that the author is unknown.
Aha.
Okay.
Well, just between you and me, we know who it is.
We know
Oh,
it's
yeah.
Sir Lawrence. I believe it too.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well
You're welcome.
told. Next up is a good friend of mine, Angela James. And Angela's a different kind of a storyteller and poet. She might make us laugh or she might make us cry, depending on our mood or hers. She uses words and music and movement to entertain and stimulate and sometimes titillate her audience. And if you don't know it already, she performs regularly all over Northern California. She organizes storytelling and poetry events in the Sacramento area. She has been a featured teller at our Auburn Winter Storytelling Festival, and we like drumming together as well as storytelling. And hers is called, her story today is called The Three Pigs. Don't make any assumptions. Here's Angela.
Thank you, Mark. I thought of the three little pigs, but by the time this story takes place, those little pigs had grown up. So this is some time ago, somewhere here in Northern California. There was this family of pigs, mother pig, daddy pig, and they had three bouncing little baby pigs. Well, time passes and daddy pig up and dies, and mama pig's having a tough time raising three little kids. They grow into teenagers, and then they are full-grown pigs, almost hogs by this time, and they're all living at home. And, you know, she had spoiled those pigs. So, but finally, mama says, this is it. She says, you guys got to leave. You got to go out and find your way in the world. But these pigs, they had such a good thing going at home, they didn't want to leave. Well, finally, mom says that's it. She gave him 6 months notice. She says, I'm going to sell the house and move into a retirement home because it's only me. Well, these boys didn't want to leave, and they hung on until the sheriff was escorting them out the door. Well, the first pig decided, well, you know, he better find a place to live. So he went out in the woods someplace, and he kind of looked around, cleared out a spot, and then he went down to the feed store, got some bales of hay, and he built himself a nice little one-room thing. Well, there was a wolf in the neighborhood. Now this wolf was bad. He was big. People call him the big bad wolf, and he loved that name. He decided one day, hey, I can do with some pork chops. So he goes up to that pig's house and he said, knocks on the door, little pig, let me in. But it wasn't a little pig anymore. It was a big pig, and he was pretty smart. He said, no way I am going to let you in. That wolf said, I'm going to huff, puff, and blow you into the next century. Oh, so he got there and he huffed and he puffed and he blew those bales of hay down, and that little pig, who was now a big pig, didn't even get a chance to get away. Well, that big bad wolf had pork chops and steaks and everything in his freezer for a long time. That was all done. He decided he really liked the taste of pork. So he went and he checked out the second pig. Now, the second pig was a little bit smarter. He had built a house out of sticks, and he'd gone to Home Depot and gotten some lumber and everything, but it was still kind of flimsy. And he got some pallets and, you know, he made it look good. Big bad wolf gets up there to the door and he says, big pig, let me in. And the pig said, you ain't coming into this house. And the big bad wolf said, I'll huff and puff and blow your house down. Well, I think he just sat and didn't laugh because he knew that wolf wouldn't get him. That wolf started to huff and puff and huff and puff, and poor wolf, he had asthma. So finally he had to stop. He pulled out his inhaler. He took 2 puffs, and then he took a third one for good measure, and then he huffed and he puffed and he one big blow, and he blew those sticks and pallets and everything all into the next county. He had more pork chops for a long time. So the following year, he says, oh my God, this is good food. I could do with some more of that pork meat. He goes to the third big pig house. And now this big pig had a big brain too. I hear pigs are smart. The first 2 weren't too smart. He had gone by a construction site and pick up all the old bricks and the discarded concrete and everything. And he had built him a house that looked like Fort Knox. So the wolf goes up. Hey, big pig, let me in. Oh, I'm going to huff and puff and blow it down if you don't let me in. And that big pig in there, he just took a sip of his beer and put his feet up and turned the TV on. That big bad wolf, he huffed and he puffed and it didn't happen. And he huffed and he puffed and it didn't happen. And he took a whiff of his inhaler and he took another one and he took a third one and he huffed and he puffed and it didn't happen. And he said, you know, I'm not going to kill myself over this. He took off to Home Depot to bought him a leaf blower. He says, I am going to show that pig who is the big bad wolf in this town. He got the most powerful leaf blower and he goes to that house and he pulls that cord and he cranks it up and he's like, aah! And that house just stood right there, strong and firm and wouldn't budge. So Big Bad Wolf came up with a different idea. He says, if I get in that house, that pig is history. So he went in back to Home Depot. He bought him a ladder and he goes to the side of the house, puts the ladder, and he climbs up determined because he had noticed a chimney. And he got to that chimney and he looked down and he didn't see anything. And he decided to go down that chimney. He said, if Santa Claus can do it, I can do it. In the meantime, that pig on the inside had looked through the window and seen what was going on. And he decided to light a fire in that fireplace. And that wolf was going down and he got stuck halfway and he felt the heat on his rear end. And he tried to go back up, but it didn't happen. He was stuck. You know, when you're going down, you just keep going. And with, oh, he's screaming, it was burning, it was burning. And, ooh, he just slid down and he got stuck right over the fire. And that big pig in there, he just turned up the volume on the TV and he had himself another beer. And later that evening, he invited all his neighbors to a really good barbecue. Now, the big bad wolf family, they put in a missing wolf report to the authorities. Well, when the authorities went to that pig's house, the pig says, you know, I heard that this big bad wolf was kind of like a traveling person, and I hear he's gone to Oregon. And that is the story that we all heard, that that wolf was seen in Oregon. But, you know, I know the story, the real story, and now you know it. So we know what happened to that big bad wolf, but we ain't saying nothing.
Thank you, Angela.
Wonderful.
Love that story. Well done. Well told. You know, I heard that when I was just a little tyke over 60 years ago, but it was a little different. I guess they didn't have Home Depot back then. So well done, Angela. Thank you. Our next up storyteller is David Tarvin. And Dave, I'll tell you, and then Gloria Jones is on deck. Dave is one of the hardest working, most dedicated storytellers I've ever met. I've heard him tell all kinds of places. I've heard him tell at people's wedding anniversaries. I've heard him tell at people's birthday parties. Anytime there's people and they're sitting around and there's a pause, Dave will entertain you. He's just that kind of guy. And I've seen him evolve as a storyteller over the years. And he's not only all of that, he is a winner. Last year, he won our Auburn Winter Storytelling Festival, and the judges didn't know him like I do. They didn't know him at all, and the competition was fierce. It was not easy, and he won. He got the trophy for the biggest tall lyre tale teller in Auburn last year. So once again, Dave, congratulations. Dave's story is titled Gratitude today, and it's a story. It's original historic fiction, so maybe he'll explain that afterwards. Take it away, Dave.
Thank you, Mark. I appreciate that. You said a lot of nice things. Thanks. And before I start my story, I just wanted to say that as a storyteller, this type of story is important to me. This is a story that I improvised one day when I was doing a storytelling activity in a skilled nursing facility. And it was really my response to a social things that were happening. And this is a fictional story. I said it in a historic setting, but it is a true story. And so for me, it's pretty important. That's why I chose to tell it today. And so, you know, it's really hot today. It is hot. I don't know where you are, but in Auburn, it's pretty hot. It's pretty hot for me. And it reminds me of a couple years ago, because guess what? It was hot then too at this time of year. And it was about 2 years ago. And it was late in the morning. I was going to work at the train museum downtown in Old Sacramento. And I always work the afternoon shift because I'm really not a morning person. So I got up, in the middle of that heat, I started driving down to Sacramento, and it's a drive. And I got down there and it was just so hot, and I pulled into the carport and I got out of my car and it was nice and cool. It was a change, you know. Then I walked through the car park. It's a huge, huge car park. And behind the museum, and I went in the back door of the museum, and that cold air just hit me. It was very comforting. I mean, the museum's all concrete. It's huge concrete. I mean, the floors of the museum are a couple of feet thick to hold up all those big, heavy trains. And so, man, I was feeling good about showing up at the museum, and I went to the meeting before our shift starts, and I had a huge stroke of luck. The train master came to me and he said, "Hey, Billy Bob called in sick. You get to work the Cochiti if you want to do that." Now, the Cochiti is a very famous dining car, and it was attached to the most famous of the famous trains from the 40s and the 50s, the Super Chief that ran from LA to Chicago, and it was called the Train of the Stars because stars would ride them all the time. And I was excited. It was very hard to be able to work on that display. And so I went to the display, and I was in my little uniform, and people started coming through, and, you know, I did my little spiel about the Chinaware, and this is the galley, and this is what they cooked, and this is how fast the train went. And then somebody came and they gave me a little break, and when I came back, there was just an old man standing in the car. He was standing right in front of the fifth table on the left side of the car. And his hat, his hand rather, he had a hat. He had an old train conductor's hat. He was just standing there staring at the table. He was just so kind of preoccupied. I walked up to him and I just kind of cleared my throat. And I turned around and I said, "Hi, I'm the docent." So I said, "Do you know anything about the train? Would you like to know anything?" He kind of smiled at me and he said, "No." He said, "I know all about this train." He said, "I used to be the conductor on the Super Chief." And I said, "Oh, well, that's interesting. I'm sure you could tell me some stories." And he said, "I could." He said, "Actually, I'm just sitting here. I'm reminded of a story when I was very young, a young conductor." And with that, he put the hat on, and this was the story that he told me. He said, "When I was a young man, I was the youngest conductor of the Super Chief, making that run from LA to Chicago in 39 3/4 hours. That's 2,229 miles. And I was the youngest, and I was ambitious. I was hardworking. I was proud. I was meticulous, hard-nosed. I lived out in the suburbs. I lived in Reseda in my nice little 2-bedroom, 1-bath, 900 square foot house. I had me a brand new little Ford sitting in the driveway. And every day I would come to work and I would make that run. But one day I came and I was in a hurry. And I came in through the back of the car, and as I walked down the hallway, I just checked in that galley to make sure those boys were working and cooking up, doing all the prep for the cooking for the coming up meal. And I stepped into the dining room, and I was shocked. I was stunned. There, at this very table, was a woman, the cleaning woman. And she had her head down on the table, and her arms on her head, and she was sobbing. She was just crying. I was pretty irritated. I was there to make sure that everything was ready. And not only that, she was sitting at Lucille's Ball's favorite table, and we were picking her up in Glendale on the way out to make that run. I was a little irritated, to say the least, and I walked over to her, and I just kind of cleared my throat and waited for her to say or do something, but she didn't. She just kept sighing uncontrollably, but she started to mutter, and she kept saying, "My child, my child." And that irritation just kind of dissipated, and I knelt down next to her, and I put my hand on her elbow. I said, "Sweet mother, what's wrong with your child?" And she just kept sobbing, saying, "My child, my child, my child." I just squeezed her elbow a little bit, and I said, tell me what's wrong. So she sat up and she wiped the tears from her face. She said, my son, he's 16 now, and he's running with the gangs and he's getting in trouble and he won't listen to me. There's nothing I can do. I'm going to lose my boy. I said, no, this is America. You could do something. I said, he doesn't listen to you? She said, no. I said, talk to the priest. She said, he won't listen to the police. I said, talk to the police. The police will help you. She said, I can't go to the police. I said, why can't you go to the police? She said, I'm illegal. I'm an illegal immigrant, and if I go to the police, they will deport me. I said, well, maybe you could go back home. She said, I cannot go back home. And then the tears started to come again. And then she told me why. She said, back home, when I was a little girl, my father started a bakery. Before long, my father had 3 bakeries, a couple in our town and one in the neighboring town, and he had about 40 employees, and he was starting to make a lot of money, so he bought a nice little ranchette out into the country, and he started to build this beautiful new home. And he was doing really well, making a lot of money, but he began to worry because sometimes people will get kidnapped or they'll come and rob you. So he called a security company and he hired a security company, and the owner came out to inspect the bakeries and to set up the security. And he came out to our home to set up the security there. He was a colonel in the military, and this was a business that he did on the side. So after he set up the security, everything went well. My dad would pay him every month, and the guy would come out once in a while. But after 6 months, he came out and he demanded more money. My father paid him. He was afraid. And pretty soon he demanded more and more. And then soon he didn't demand, he just took. He took my mother's silver candelabras, the candlesticks that her grandmother had brought over from Spain. He took my father's car. And when I was 16, he took me. And I became pregnant. When my sister turned 16, he took her. She became pregnant. And that's the way that we lived for years. And then one day we were watching TV, and there he was, big as life on TV, being arrested. He was going to prison. He was at least going to jail, maybe to prison. And so I turned to my father and I said, Father, let us escape. Let us go to America. We can bring up our children in peace. My father said, no, I can't do that. My mother said no, my sister said no. So I took my little 6-year-old boy and I made my way here to America. And I've been here now 10 years, but I am illegal. And I can't go to the police, and I can't ask for help, and I can't go home. Well, I just stood there and I didn't know what to say to her. I just looked at her, she looked at me, and I just said, we'll pray about it, maybe something will happen. And I turned and left and made the rest of my inspection. She got off the train, I made my run, but the whole time, I couldn't get her out of my mind. Couldn't think of anything else. I got back from my run. I got in my brand new Ford. I drove to Reseda, pulled into the driveway, walked into the living room, and there was my wife and my 6-year-old daughter. And all of a sudden, I just ran up to my wife and I grabbed my little girl and I hugged them both, and I began to cry. And my wife said, what's wrong, what's wrong, what's wrong? And I couldn't speak. The tears just poured. She said, what's wrong, what's wrong? And I dropped to my knees and I said, but for the grace of God, there go I. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave.
Wow.
Very powerful, Dave. Good job.
Yeah.
Beautiful story.
Thank you.
Well done. Well done. Yeah, thank you, Dave. All the years I've been listening to you tell stories, Dave, I know you've worked at it, and I think you've just grown. I think you've just mastered your craft, and it's been great to watch you working and improving all of these years. My hat is off to you, man of many hats.
Well, thank you.
Next up is Gloria Jones. Gloria Jones has been a featured teller at our Auburn Winter Storytelling Festival. She is a retired school teacher. Since retiring, she enjoys her hobbies of writing, and art. She's a wife, a mother, and although she doesn't look like it, she's a grandmother. And her story today is called The Arc of My Arrow. Here is Gloria Jones.
Thank you. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. That's the sound of a dog barking. The barking is coming from the inside of a seedy little motel room somewhere between California and Illinois, probably around the area of Texas. The dog is barking because men are fighting outside of the room that he shares with me and my adult son. My dog Arrow is brave as he stands his ground and barks at those men who are doing their fisticuffs outside of our room. He dares anyone to come over our threshold. You see, we had departed Illinois in an ice storm, leaving bad weather, small town botheration, and our home of 20 years. It was a long, tough drive. I and my adult son piled up our car with the last vestiges of our belongings, from the floor to the hood, just stuffed with stuff. And there, sitting in the back, proudly and patiently, was Alan. Now, my son was a little annoyed. Mom, I told you we shouldn't stop here, but oh no, you have to save a few pennies. You just have to be so cheap. I mean, we stop at these seedy little places. I don't know what on and on he went. I knew he was probably right, but by that time I was not paying him much attention because I was busy rubbing Arrow's ears and looking into his soft brown eyes and telling him how much I appreciated his valor. And he looked into my eyes, tail gently wagging. That was my Arrow. And by this time, those men have taken their battle on elsewhere because Arrow had frightened them away from our door. My mind went back to the year before this, the year that we were talking of the motel, a time when I decided that my life was going to take a different direction. Yes, it would be a direction that involved a dog. We were not a dog-owning family, the nuclear family that Ed and I had raised with our children because, well, I just figured 3 kids, that's enough to take care of. But now I wanted a dog. I was on my way out to California. My husband was already here working, but I was left behind to tie up all the loose ends and sell the house. And yes, I decided that I now would have a dog. And I began to daydream about the dog I would have. I would have an impressive dog, yes. When we walked down the street, people would look at us and they would say, oh, look at that dignified woman and her impressive dog. Yes. And so I began my search. Now, in the small town where we lived, there was a farmer's market that started in the spring, every Saturday. And lots of people would bring puppies and kittens and all kinds of wonderful animals that you could have for just a little bit, or if you wanted, sometimes they would give them to you for free. So, since I was on this search for this dog, and I talked to God as I always do, and I decided that God had told me that I would have a dog on maybe the second or third Saturday at the market. So, the second or third Saturday came, and I approached the market, filled with expectation and excitement. I was going to get an impressive dog. So I walked up to the market that day and headed straight over to the pet section, all excited, wondering what was there for me. And I looked around and there were cats everywhere. There's even a bunny or two, a hamster, but there was only one woman looking for a home for her rescue dog. And he was not impressive. Not impressive at all. He was brown and white, and I guess his feet were white, and his feet had, spots on them, little spotted feet. And I thought to myself, oh no, this will never work. I'm not looking for spots. Now, I digress. Lest anybody feel that I have anything against a Dalmatian, I do not. Dalmatians and their spots are wonderful. They're a noble breed. I like Dalmatians. But having gone through life with moles everywhere, freckles where the moles weren't, I've had kind of enough of spots. So I was looking for an unspotted dog. The woman looked at me because I was standing there looking at her dog. And so to be polite, I said, oh, well, what's his name? She grew excited. His name is Arrow. And we had to take him back from his first family because they were not kind to him. They broke his leg and somehow they didn't even get it fixed. So we took it back and then we paid a veterinarian to fix his leg. And so now we're collecting to try to pay for the vet bill, yes. So she got all excited and I thought, oh, well, I'll go on and give this woman $20 and leave because this is not the dog the Lord has for me. So I gave her $20 and I left and I thought to myself, I looked skyward and I said, well, Lord, that was a pretty good joke. So I went home and a week or two later, I decided to get on the computer. That's where I would find my impressive dog. And I typed in all the things I wanted about my dog and where I was. And, I preferred that he was, housebroken, yada, yada, yada. And I hit the button and who should come up but Arrow. Well, I hit the button, turned that computer right off because that wasn't the dignified dog, the impressive dog that I was looking for. And so I waited a few more weeks. I thought, well, if I wait a few more weeks, somebody will take that dog and there will be impressive dogs back at the market. So I went back to the market for a second time and I walked up to where the pet area was and there she was again with that dog, that Arrow. So I turned around and went back home and I thought to myself, well, this is just terrible. Now, at that time, I was in the habit of reading one chapter a night in my Bible. And when I got ready to read, it was just before bed. I couldn't get that dog out of my mind. So I said, all right, Lord, this is the dog you have for me. Let me see the word Arrow in the next chapter I'm reading because I read it random. So I'm reading along, and there it was, Isaiah 37:33. And I will paraphrase it for you. It said, they shall not shoot one arrow over the walls of the city. I said, ooh, okay, I'll go back and get the dog. So I went back and I got the dog. I looked at him and he looked at me. He still was not impressive. So I took him home and it was kind of amazing. He never needed a leash. He would follow me anywhere. He was completely house trained. He would even go to my mother's facility where she was staying, walk down the halls, never made a mess. He would wait for me outside of the little store down the road when I went to get a drink or something to eat. I'd come out and there he would be, sitting patiently. And of course, little by little, I fell in love with him. Now, except for his deep hatred of balloons and his suspicion every time we turn on the house fan, he's a pretty perfect little guy. And he's been with us now for 13 years. And we've shared many, many, many wonderful moments. especially the one in the hotel where he ran away those people. But I came downstairs last week or two, one day, and usually he's up and ready for his walk. But that day, he was lying on his side, listless, ragged breaths, and he couldn't really get up. And I thought, oh no, I don't want him to cross over to that threshold just yet. I don't want to lose him. We called all the vets, and because of COVID, everybody is backed up. Couldn't take him for a week, and I knew he wouldn't last that long. But then there was a miraculous cancellation, and we were able to get him in at a vet service at Rockland. So we took him in, said a little prayer, and they were able to save my arrow. I'm happy to announce that he has taken his meds. He is much, much better. And I think he'll be with us for a lot longer now. And as I look at him every day and appreciate him, I think to myself, my, what an impressive dog you are. Thank you.
Thank you, Gloria. That was wonderful. Yeah, well done. And I have to say, I love those braids and with your freckles. It's a good thing I'm not sitting behind you with an inkwell, because I don't think I could help myself. You look really cute. Thank you for a great story. Well told.
Thank you.
Next up is Linda Kennedy, and before I introduce our cleanup hitter, our bring it home for us today, I just want to mention that next month, third Saturday next month, this is going to be hosted by Dave Tarvin, and he is in the chat space. If you go into the chat, you'll see his phone number and his email address. Please contact Dave if you'd like to be a storyteller next month, the month of September. I understand the topic is going to have something to do with labor, and Dave's there for you. And I want to thank all of our tellers today. Thank you guys for saying yes to my invitation. And Linda Kennedy, well, I've known her for a long time. We are both founding members of the Auburn, which we call the Foothill. We call it the Foothill Storytelling Guild. And Linda has been an inspiration to me for I don't know how many years. Anyway, she's been telling for 35 years. She's also a member of the Sacramento Guild, the state, and the national organizations. She has told many places, many times, and she also was a part of the Do Tell Duo. She can do tandem stories. She can entertain children. She can do it all. And she was on the main stage at the Sierra Storytelling Festival, the queen of storytelling festivals up in North San Juan. And she has been the MC for the open telling there for 11 years. And I think she's such a good storyteller that I don't call her Linda anymore. I call her Lindarella. Here she is, Lindarella.
Oh, Mark, you make me sound good. Thank you, my friend. Oh, dear. I love stories from India. Gopal Bhatt, a trickster, a court jester, is one of my favorite characters, and this is one of those stories. The Nawab, which was also like a king in the ancient region of India, was insufferable. He wanted to be known as the wisest, the most powerful Nawab that had ever been in the history of that land. And if there was something he did not know, he would just send one of his assistants of the court out to find out. And he did not like to be disappointed. If you did not come back with the answer for what he was wanting with you. So one day he got to pondering about some things he needed to have answers for. So he called the Maharaja to his courtroom. And he told him, you know, he says, I have been thinking that I need to know how wide the earth is from this side to that side. And I need to know how high the earth is from its top all the way to its bottom. So I need for you to go out and get those measurements. And while you are at it, come nightfall, go out and look at the night sky, and I want you to count every star and bring back that information, or you know the consequences. And the Maharaja says, your wish is my command. And off the Maharaja went. But as soon as he was out of sight of the Nawab, he started shaking in those little silver slippers of his, and he made his way out to the steps beyond the gate of the palace, and he sat down and he began to cry. Well, Gopal Bar, his friend, was walking down the street and sees his friend, the Maharaja, on those steps crying. My friend, I hope it's not bad news. What is it? And Maharaja said, oh, the Nawab has asked me to do an impossible task, impossible, and if I don't get it, you know, and I don't know what I'm going to do. And Gopal Bar says, tell me what it is. I can do this for you. Tell me what it is. And so it was. The Maharaja told the Gopal Bar that he needed to measure the earth from here to here and there to there and to count every star in the sky. Well, Gopal Bar said, easy as a piece of Shinanpoda. That's a cake from India, by the way. And he said, first of all, because you are a member of the court, I need for you to appoint me an official earth measurer and star counter. And then, because this looks like a very big, if not almost impossible task, I need for you to go to the Nawab and tell him that I will do this for him and I will report the results to him myself. But I will need 1 year to do it. And operating expenses, how about 1 million rupees? Well, the Maharaja was delighted to find out that if Gopal Bar was going to do this, it would be his head that rolled and not himself. So he went to the Nawab and he told him that the official earth measurer and star counter needed 1 year and 1 million rupees for operating expenses because it was such almost impossible task and only a brilliant Nawab would even ask for such a thing. Well, the Nawab, he just got so full of himself thinking, I asked such an impossible task. Of course I'll give him 1 year and of course he may have 1 million rupees. So the Maharaja takes the money, gives it to Gopal Bar, and Gopal Bar leaves. And I'm going to tell you, he had the time of his life. For 1 year, he traveled throughout the land. For 1 year, he bought palaces. He ate exotic foods. He paid for dancing girls. He bought jewels. And he bought himself an elephant. And at the end of the year, he found his way back to the front steps of the palace. The Maharaja was anxious to see him because he wanted to hear all of the information he had gathered. Gopal Bar said to Maharaja, oh, do you know that was such a brilliant Nawab that we have, that he could come up with such a difficult, amazingly difficult task that it's taking me a long time to gather this information. Now, I've come a long way, but I still need 1 more year. And you know, operating expenses, 1 million more rupees. Reluctantly, Maharaja went back to the Nawab and he said, I have news for you. Although I don't have the results yet, he is working hard, very hard, and he praises you for your brilliance of coming up with such a difficult task that he would like to have 1 more year and he needs 1 more million rupees operating expenses, if you don't mind, Nawab. Well, Nawab loved the praise of how brilliant he was. So of course, he gave 1 more year and 1 more million rupees to Gopal Bar. Now, Gopal Bar had 1 year experience on how to have a good time with 1 million rupees. So off he went and had more fun than ever because he was practiced. And there were the dancing girls, there was the exotic foods, more palaces, all of the things he'd done before and even more. And because he already had an elephant, he bought himself a tiger. Now it was the end of the 2nd year. And Maharaja was out on the steps outside the gate of the palace, looking up and down the road, hoping to see Gopal Bar coming with the results. And there he was, coming down the road, and with him, he had 15 carts of beautiful fine silk thread that was all snarly and matted and tangled and knotted, pushed into these 15 carts. and 5 sheep. And Maharaja says, do you have the results? He says, yes, they're right here. Take me before the Nawab. And so it was. Gopal Bhar went into the court carrying all of that in with him. And the Nawab said, what is all of this? And Gopal Bhar said, these are the results. He says, yeah, I can see you have all of this stuff here, but what are the figures? Tell me now. Oh, Gopal Bhar said, figures? You never mentioned the word figures before. All you wanted to know was how much, how high, how wide, how many stars. You never mentioned figures. And Your Highness, I am here to tell you that in the first 7 cards, if you untangle that beautiful fine silk thread and you stretch it out from end to end, it is exactly the width of the earth. And then if you untangle that fine silk thread from the other 8 cards and stretch them out from end to end, it is exactly the height of the earth. Who knew that the earth was taller than it was wide? He said. So, he said, and now let me tell you about the sheep. If you count every hair on these 5 sheep, it is exactly equal to the amount of stars in the sky. And let me tell you, it was not easy to come by these 5 sheep. I went to the Himalayas. I went to the Alps. I went to the Pyrenees. I went to the Andes. And then I went to the Rockies. And it took a long time to find the 5 perfect sheep whose hair totaled that amount. So there you are. And then Nawab looked at those cards. He looked at those sheep. He said, but, Nawab said, and Gopal Bhar said, no, you asked, here it is. And you were so brilliant to come up with such a task. And once again, Nawab said, yes, I was. I am. And I am totally amazed at your findings. And so I thank you. And as a reward for all that you have done, I am going to give you the gift, a bonus of 1 million rupees for you to go and spend on anything you want because of the fine job you have done.
Good one.
Great story, Lindarella. Of course. Well done. Thank you, Joyce. At this time, I want to thank all my fabulous tellers who went above and beyond and did such a great job. I also want to thank Shags for his technical support in making this happen, making everybody able to come in. And I also want to thank Ed for being my backup. And Shag has something to show us, I believe, and maybe tell us about.
I did show it.
Did
you see that? Did you see the slide? Yeah. If you're not a member of SAC, join SAC. We've got great stuff going on.
Could you put that up again?
I could. And
there it is.
And I'd like to add one thing.
Because of Ed, we've got so much great stuff going on.
Yes. At this website, you can go online on Wednesday, this Wednesday coming up, and most of you have gotten this. You'll be able to hear 6 storytellers from different swap groups around California. Linda is going to be one of them, representing Foothill. Gloria is going to represent our Sacramento group, and then there's people from San Diego and different places. So we'll have 6 people, and it's called genre storytelling. And each month we're going to use a different genre. So the first genre is personal stories. Next month will be folk tales. The following month after that will be spooky, scary stories, and then tall tales and all kinds of genres. And we will have 6 tellers that represent different swap groups around California. So you can go online I put the information in the chat room. And most of you probably have already gotten this flyer, but you can go online to the Storytelling Association of California and click on the genre storytelling section and register to listen to the stories. And if you feel like donating, you can donate. And all the donation money will go to the Storytellers. So that's this Wednesday at 6:30, August 19th.
Ed, this is Karen. You want to remind everybody they can join our Sacramento Storytellers Guild if they're not already members.
Go ahead. Why don't you tell them about it?
Oh, well, just that Sacramento Storytellers Guild is one of the oldest guilds in California, and it has grown from a few people to a large group, and then we've gone up and down over the years, but we always stay around in the 20s that we have membership, and we are the ones that put these programs on once a month. And so I look forward to these meetings every month and to where we might be able to meet in the future when we get back together. And when we have our executive board meeting, I have a location I think that might work for us. So anyway, just to let you know, we only cost $10 a year. So it's inexpensive, but Joyce puts out a newsletter for us quarterly and send us all the updates. And Ed, thank you, was very good at sending us all the California Storytellers information. So we have a lot of stuff going out, but it's through our membership list that Joyce keeps everybody in touch. So thank you, Joyce, for doing that, but please consider joining our association.
And who would they contact to join?
Joyce.
So Joyce, will you put your email in the chat room? And if any of you want to join our organization, take a look at that, and she will send you a form to fill out and how to join.
Okay, Ed, before we close out, I want to know what that big spider is doing above your head.
Oh, well, that is an octopus, and over here is a pufferfish. So it's above my little aquarium. So they are the guardians of the aquarium.
Oh.
Good question. Thanks for asking, Karen.
And you did a great job, Mark. And
yes, thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Thank you for getting someone to fill in for me.
Nice job, Mark.
Thanks.
Maybe next time we can all. Maybe next time we can all come to my bar.
Ooh, I like it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Looking good.
Nobody's there, COVID free, so free drinks too.
All right.
Oh, free
I
drink
believe
season.
I'll have me a pint.
We'll all show up for that. So once again, Dave Tarvin is host next month. His contact information is in the chat. And thank you all for today. Well done. Good job.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Mark. Appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you, Mark.
Take care.
All right.
All right. Thanks.
All
Bye.
right. See you next month.
Thanks,
Bye.
Ed.
Bye, Ed.
Goodbye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
See you all Wednesday.
All right.